Hello and welcome to this edition of News on the Hour, in which we bring you all the news from across India and the world. Let's begin by taking a look at the top stories that we're tracking at this hour. On World Water Day today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi to launch Catch the Rain movement to strengthen water conservation efforts in the country, signing off historic Memorandum of Agreement to implement Ken-Betwa link project to also take place. 4 terrorists of Lashkar-e-Taiba killed in encounter between security forces and terrorists in Manihal area of Shopian district. Incriminating material including arms and ammunition recovered. Joint search operation underway. Election campaign gains momentum in battleground states. Home Minister Amit Shah to hold multiple rallies in Assam today. Launches BJP manifesto for Bengal. Promises jobs and implementation of central schemes like Ayushman Bharat and PM Kisan Samman Yojana. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi to campaign for the party in Kerala. Important legislations on agenda in the Lok Sabha today. Development Finance Institution Bill to be introduced in the lower house, while passing of Finance Bill 2021 to also be on the agenda. Maharashtra records 30,535 COVID cases over last 24 hours, highest ever single day rise recorded in a state. Rajasthan imposes night curfew in 8 cities, including in Jaipur and Ajmer. Schools, colleges and Anganwadis closed in Chhattisgarh. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin pays a surprise visit to Afghanistan, discusses peace process with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. Visit is significant as deadline for withdrawal of American troops nears. Worst rainfall in decades causes severe flooding in Australia's east coast, forcing thousands to evacuate. New South Wales is the most affected. Australian Met Department warns downpour to continue for several days. In sports, Chelsea will play quadruple chasing Manchester City in FA Cup semi-finals, while Leicester City to face Southampton in other last 4 tie. Matches to be played on 17th and 18th of April. And welcome once again. In our top story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will launch the Catch the Rain campaign, the Jal Shakti Abhiyan Catch the Rain campaign, on the occasion of World Water Day today. The historic Memorandum of Agreement for the Ken-Betwa link project will also be signed in the presence of the Prime Minister. The Memorandum of Agreement between the Union Minister of Jal Shakti and the Chief Ministers of Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh will be the first project of the National Perspective Plan for the interlinking of rivers.
पानी एक तरह से पारस से भी ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण कहा जाता है। पारस के स्पर्श से लोहा सोने में परिवर्तित हो जाता है। वैसे ही पानी का स्पर्श जीवन के लिए जरूरी है, विकास के लिए जरूरी है। भारत में कोई ऐसा दिन नहीं होगा जब देश के किसी न किसी कोने में पानी से जुड़ा कोई उत्सव न हो।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi emphasizing the value of water. In his Mann Ki Baat program in February, he spoke at length about the importance of saving water. With the summer months setting in, Prime Minister urged citizens to begin conservation efforts in right earnest. India receives rain all through the year, but just 1% of this is conserved. Keeping this in mind, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will launch the Jal Shakti Abhiyan Catch the Rain campaign on 22nd March, which is World Water Day.
जल शक्ति मंत्रालय द्वारा भी जल शक्ति अभियान कैच द रेन भी शुरू किया जा रहा है। इस अभियान का मूल मंत्र है कैच द रेन वेयर इट फॉल्स when it falls. हम अभी से जुटेंगे, हम पहले से जो रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग सिस्टम है उन्हें दुरुस्त करवा लेंगे, गांवों में, तालाबों में, पोखरों की सफाई करवा लेंगे, जल स्रोतों तक जा रहे पानी के रास्ते की रुकावटें दूर कर लेंगे, तो ज्यादा से ज्यादा वर्षा जल का संचयन कर पाएंगे।
A historic memorandum of agreement between the Union Minister of Jal Shakti and the Chief Ministers of Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh to implement the Ken-Betwa link project, the first project of the National Perspective Plan for interlinking of rivers, will also take place. Speaking at an event in Bengaluru, Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar said that it is the responsibility of every citizen to preserve every drop of water.
Without water, we can't survive. So our first job as a national task is to ensure that we harvest every drop of water which rain brings. We need to preserve, ensure its percolation. Then we must use water very scarcely, save water, generate water.
Prior to World Water Day, a high-level meeting was hosted online at the United Nations to inspire action while drawing attention to valuing water. President of the United Nations General Assembly, Volkan Bozkir, expressed regret that the global community has failed to understand the importance of clean water. He stressed on the critical importance of adequate access to safe water and sanitation for containing diseases with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The fact that billions of people have had to face this pandemic without basic hand-washing facilities, and that health providers in some of the least developed countries do not have running water is impossible to reconcile. This stark example of global inequality can and must spur us to action.
Participating in the meeting, Jal Shakti Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat underlined Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision to address all water-related issues in the creation of a separate ministry for water conservation and management established in 2019. The minister also highlighted River Ganga being cleaned under the National River Conservation Plan.
Recently, we launched the Water is Life mission, Jal Jeevan, a US $50 billion project to provide safe and pipe drinking water to all households by 2024.
On Monday, an innovative mission for water conservation, Catch the Rain, will be launched. The emphasis will be on conserving rainwater. Along with cleaning wells and ponds, there will be an effort to increase the groundwater level by collecting and conserving rainwater. Bureau Report, DD India.
And joining us now is our correspondent Arun Sharma, who's covering this story. Arun, a very good morning to you once again. When we talk about catching the rain movement, the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, the step forward in conservation of water, what does it mean? Are we looking at another major people's movement?
Absolutely, Rukma, and this fact that the next big crisis for the entire humanity can be the water scarcity for the entire globe, and that's the reason why globally major countries are coming forward as far as fulfilling their commitment is concerned for conserving water. Now, India is also taking a leadership role as far as water conservation is concerned. And in that context, only today's event of this Jal Shakti mission, primarily Catch the Rainwater, is going to be very much significant. We hardly, are in a position to conserve the water. Only 1% can be conserved. And on the other side, wherever there is excessive rainfall, we witness floods in that area. And wherever there is water deficit states or region, over there we see the droughts in that area. So the idea is that how can the rainwater harvesting infrastructure can be created not only in big cities, big towns, but also in the rural areas as well. So for that, how can startups of our country can come forward and contribute and can give innovative solutions as far as creating the harvesting, the water harvesting infrastructure? So that can be a major idea, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is very much likely to come out and appeal to these the youngsters of our country that how can they contribute as far as harvesting infrastructure, primarily the water harvesting infrastructure in our country. Second important aspect is, of course, about the awareness point. And that's the reason, at various Gram Panchayats and Gram Sabha level, various awareness programs will be done as far as this mission is concerned. People will be made aware about the fact that what is the importance of water conservation and how it plays an important role, in lives of our people. Because, we know this fact that by 2030, major regions of the world primarily are likely to face water shortage. Acute water shortages primarily. This is according to the World Bank, the United Nations report, that how can various regions of our country and of course in various parts of the world, they can face water shortage issues going forward. So there's a need for water conservation, and in that context, this initiative by the government of India, and of course Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to start this mission and initiative, is going to be very much important. And as earlier we have said, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, where it was a people's movement, it was a public movement primarily that led to the success of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So in a similar manner, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is intending to make this entire movement of conserving water a public movement, a people's movement, so that it also becomes success, and we also are in a position to combat the next crisis, which is very much likely about the water crisis.
A very important aspect of this movement, of this proposed movement, is the interlinking of rivers. When we talk about conserving water in India, when we talk about protecting our rivers, it's not just about cleanliness, it's about connecting back to our roots, to our traditions, and that is what is being emphasized again and again.
Absolutely. So as of now, what India is targeting, that there are close to 30 projects that are related to river interlinking projects that are in pipeline, that are in various stages of being interlinked or interconnected. Now, the Ken Betwa project, that is, going to be, you can say that the MOU will be signed between the government of Madhya Pradesh and government of Uttar Pradesh. So idea is, this fact that Ken Betwa rivers in Madhya Pradesh. So this area primarily is a water surplus area. That means we often witness that there is surplus amount of water as far as this region is concerned. But again, when we talk about the Bundelkhand region in Uttar Pradesh, it is going to be a boon today as far as this historic MOU is concerned, because we have often heard various stories, various news stories, that how Bundelkhand has often faced and witnessed various droughts primarily in this region, and how farmers have committed suicide due to shortage of water, due to droughts in this region. So yes, when after this MOU that is being signed between state government of Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, the important aspect is that the surplus amount of water will be in a position to transport or to be brought to the water deficit areas like Bundelkhand in Uttar Pradesh. This will play an important role, that on one side, floods can be avoided, whereby there is a water surplus area. So on the other side, wherever there is a water deficit areas like Bundelkhand in Uttar Pradesh and various other districts of Uttar Pradesh, it will be a game changer, because those regions whereby water, there is a scarcity of water, via canal system, water will be transported to these areas. So idea is that, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister of our country, this was his idea as to how can water linking projects can be created. The river interlinking projects primarily can be, given a go-ahead, and how can they be created. Second important aspect, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he was the Gujarat Chief Minister, at that time primarily he came out with the Soni Pariyojana or Soni project, whereby the idea is that as to how can water surplus areas in Gujarat, how can water be transported to areas like Kutch and Bhuj, which primarily are water deficit areas. So over there, a strong mechanism or strong infrastructure of canal system was created, the Soni Pariyojana or Soni Yojana. So in a similar manner, the idea is that how can states be connected, number one. Number two, how can rivers be interconnected or interlinked, and that's the reason it's going to be a game changer, because primarily you can say that 6 million people will get potable water for drinking. Close to 1 million land of hectare, for 1.6 million hectare of land will be irrigated via this kind of projects. And we know this fact that more than 100 megawatt of hydroelectric, electricity can be generated that is green in nature via these kind of projects. So indeed, it's a win-win situation for all these stakeholders, primarily as far as the Ken Betwa project is concerned.
Right. Thank you very much, Arun, for joining us there on that story, and we'll be back with you throughout the day for more. And now moving on, in Jammu and Kashmir, 4 terrorists of Lashkar-e-Taiba were gunned down during an encounter between security forces and terrorists in the Manihal area of Shopian district. Incriminating materials including one AK-47, 2 pistols and other Arms and ammunition have been recovered from the slain terrorists. The joint operation was launched in the wee hours today morning. Based on Jammu Kashmir police inputs, search operations are in progress. And now news from the poll-bound states. Political parties continue to intensify campaigning for the first two phases of the assembly elections in Assam and West Bengal. Union Home Minister Amit Shah will campaign in Assam today, where he will address election rallies in Dhemaji, Majuli and Udalguri. Besides, BJP National President JP Nadda will also address public rallies in Assam's Tinkhong and Tittabor district. Meanwhile, in Bengal, BJP released its manifesto yesterday promising jobs and implementation of central schemes like Ayushman Bharat and PM Kisan Samman Yojana. Talking of other states, Congress's Rahul Gandhi will campaign in Kerala today. And many significant legislative works are listed in the Lok Sabha for today. The National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development Bill 2021 will be introduced. The bill got the Cabinet's nod last week. Besides, Nirmala Sitharaman will move the Finance Bill 2021-22 for consideration and passing. And let's now take a look at COVID-19 updates from across the country. As per the Union Health Ministry, 22,956 recoveries have been recorded in the past 24 hours, taking the cumulative total of recovered patients to 1,11,30,288. With this, the recovery rate currently stands at 95.96%. India's total active caseload stands at over 3,09,000 today. The country's present active caseload consists of 2.66% of total positive cases. The fatality rate stands at 1.38%. Meanwhile, over 4 crore 50 lakh vaccine doses have been administered so far, with over 4 lakh 62,000 given yesterday itself. And according to the ICMR, there's the Indian Council of Medical Research, testing to track coronavirus has been going on successfully. As of today, over 23 crore 44 lakh tests have been conducted. More than 8 lakh tests were conducted in the country yesterday. Under India's initiative of Vaccine Maitri, Made in India vaccines have arrived in La Paz, Bolivia. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar termed this as a friendship reaching greater heights. Vaccine Maitri is a humanitarian initiative undertaken by India to provide Made in India vaccines to other countries around the world. The Indian government had started providing Indian-made vaccines since the 20th of January this year. Meanwhile, Maharashtra and its capital Mumbai continue to report high daily infections since the pandemic in March last year. In what is threatening to be a deadlier second wave of COVID, the state reported 30,355 cases yesterday, while 3,775 fresh cases were reported in the city. With this, the state's overall tally of infections mounted to 24,79,682, while 99 fatalities have pushed the total to 53,399. Owing to the deteriorating situation, the Nanded administration has announced curfew for 11 days starting Wednesday. And joining us with more details on this story is our correspondent Shama Mishra, who's joining us from Mumbai. Shama, a very good morning to you once again. Take us through the latest updates on the COVID situation there. We believe that the total tally now is 24 lakhs, above 24 lakhs.
Right, Rukma, and the numbers that we are seeing every day that is coming of the total COVID positive numbers in Maharashtra since the last 4 days is crossing the 25,000 mark, and yesterday it has registered a new record high that is of above 30,000. So you can imagine how grim is the situation in Maharashtra, and that is why to curb the situation, to curb the virus from spreading further, all districts in Maharashtra are taking measures, and these measures range from lockdown, night curfew, stringent measures in place, transportation movement restriction, and everything that could possibly used. In Mumbai, if we are talking, then Mumbai also has registered more than 3,700 cases yesterday, and this is the same for Pune, Thane. These areas are also registering new record high, and that is why we are seeing Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation, BMC, has decided that if not a lockdown, then stringent measures would be put in place in Mumbai to curb the virus from spreading further, and that is why they have issued an order that offices would work at a 50% capacity, and also the offices where the government hospitals or essential services is related, they can work out how many people are required at a time, and then they can work accordingly. Apart from that, we've also seen that rapid antigen tests would be carried out at various places, including malls, tourist places, cow gullies, or even of hawkers and these places. So yes, we are also checking if a person is spreading the coronavirus or not. Apart from this, Nanded, Parbhani, Pune, Nagpur, these places have also imposed lockdown, and strict lockdowns are being implemented in these places. That means vehicular restriction, no vehicles apart from the essential services. One can travel from one place to another. The borders are shut, and likewise many restrictions are being imposed in the state of Maharashtra.
And Shama, what are doctors saying is the reason for this rise? Are there any peculiarities in this second wave?
Since the vaccination drive has begun, we did see that the cases started rising after the first week of February, midweek of February, and when the vaccination had begun, that was like mid-January. And that is when people started letting their guards down. They started behaving carelessly that the whole pandemic is over, and that is why they thought it is okay to let their guards down. So people, if you see in crowded places, first of all, there shouldn't be crowd, but yes, the bazaars and days market, when we say like Sunday market or Monday market in specific areas, these markets are super crowded. Apart from that, we are also seeing people are not wearing their masks properly. Even if they are wearing it, they are wearing it below their nose or below their chin, and that is why no protection at all. Apart from that, we also seeing climate changes, and we also know that the winters that come and the winters that are going are the most dangerous ones. And even Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said earlier when the COVID appropriate behavior program was launched that we should be very careful when this climate is changing, and that is why we are seeing a rise in numbers of cases, apart from the people who are very careless and not maintaining the COVID appropriate behavior.
Right, Shama. Well, we'll have to leave it at that for now. You keep your eyes on that story. We'll be back with you throughout the day for more. Thanks for joining us right now on News on the Hour. And now moving on to other news stories, the Rajasthan government, again related to COVID, has decided to impose a night curfew, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. in 8 cities across the state in view of the rise in cases. The 8 cities where night curfew will be imposed are Ajmer, Bhilwara, Jaipur, Jodhpur, Kota, Udaipur, Sagwara and Kushalgarh. The state government has also decided that markets in all urban areas will be closed by 10 p.m. from today. Also, those entering Jaipur will need to furnish an RT-PCR negative COVID-19 test report, not older than 3 days from the 25th of March. In Chhattisgarh, Schools, colleges and Anganwadis will be closed with immediate effect as COVID-19 cases witness a spike in the state. Chief Minister Bhupesh Baghel yesterday chaired a meeting of his cabinet ministers and senior officials to ensure guidelines are enforced to check the spread of the virus in view of the Holi, which is coming soon, as well as the wedding season. The CM also directed that the number of daily COVID-19 tests be increased as well as the vaccination drive be expedited. Moving on, the Indian Army rescued 2 individuals stuck in the icy heights of Sadhana Pass alongside the Shamshabhari ranges. The avalanche rescue team of the Indian Army swung into immediate action amid heavy snowfall. Upon receiving inputs, about 2 civilians stuck with their vehicle about 1 kilometer ahead of Sadhana Pass. The Army housed the rescued civilians, providing them adequate amenities for the night. Despite restricted vehicular movement at the treacherous pass owing to weather conditions, people circumvent checkposts, posing a challenge for security forces, ensuing in such risky rescue operations. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has received an alert by Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-IN, of a possible cyber attack targeting Indian transport sectors with malicious intentions. The ministry has issued guidelines to its departments and organizations directing them to ramp up their cyber security. These directions have been issued to departments such as NIC, NHAI, NHIDCL, IRC, IAHE, state PWDs, testing agencies and automobile manufacturers. The ministry has requested conducting security audit of the entire IT system by certain certified agencies on a regular basis. An Indian Navy ship, Shardul, has arrived at the port in Madagascar for overseas deployment of training squadron. During the visit, the ship will undertake PASEX and joint patrolling in waters. The Indian Embassy in Madagascar has said that the visit of INS Shardul highlights the strengthening of defence ties between India and Madagascar as partners in the Indian Ocean region under the vision of Sagar. Last year, INS Shardul had visited on 10th March 2020 with relief material comprising 600 tons of rice on behalf of India to deliver quick relief to flood victims of Madagascar. And you're watching News on the Hour here on DD India. And it's time now for a short break, but more news up ahead from across the world, sports and so on. So keep watching.
The changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India. Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in Middle East countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back after that break. And in other news, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin paid a surprise visit to Afghanistan yesterday, just weeks before the May 1st deadline for U.S. troop withdrawal from there. Austin held a meeting with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, during which they discussed the peace process and concerns over rising violence in Afghanistan. Austin stressed that the focus should be on reducing high levels of violence to allow a negotiated end to the conflict. This is Austin's first Kabul visit as Secretary of Defense.
Of an end date or setting a specific date for withdrawal, that's the domain of my boss. That's the decision that the president will make at some point in time in terms of how he wants to approach this going forward. And I don't want to try to do my boss's job for him. He doesn't need for me to do that. I will continue to participate in a very meaningful way in the review that's ongoing, though.
The pullout agreed to with the Taliban by the Trump administration last year said that the U.S. and its NATO allies would withdraw all troops in 14 months if the Taliban upheld its promises. The promises included not allowing Al-Qaeda or other militants to operate in areas it controlled and proceeding with national peace talks. Although the Taliban, as a hardline Islamist movement, stopped attacks on international forces as part of the historic agreement, it has continued to fight the Afghan government. And Australia's east coast has been smashed by heavy rains for several days now, sparking dangerous flash flooding on the New South Wales mid-north coast, with floodwater surrounding properties. Heavy rains along Australia's east coast have brought the worst floods in half a century in some areas. This is in stark contrast to the bushfires that ravaged Australia between 2019 and 2020, with serious consequences for the environment. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian said the downpour across the state was worse than initially expected, especially for low-lying areas in Sydney's northwest. Meanwhile, Sydney on Sunday recorded the wettest day of the year with almost 111 millimeters of rain, while some regions in New South Wales' north coast received nearly 900 millimeters of rain in the last 6 days. The Australian government has declared a natural disaster in several areas as heavy rain continues to batter the state. This comes just after last week's Quad leaders' joint statement pledging to strengthen cooperation on various challenges, including the threat of climate change. And in an update from Myanmar, demonstrators have maintained their dogged opposition to military rule on Sunday, despite a rising death toll, with 2 more people killed as the junta appeared equally determined to resist growing pressure to compromise. The country has been in turmoil since the military overthrew an elected government led by Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi on the 1st of February, bringing an end to 10 years of tentative democratic reform. At least 249 people have now been killed since the coup, according to figures from the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners activist group. Earlier coup leader General Min Aung Hlaing visited the armed forces and reminded the members that their main duty was to defend the country against external threats. He visited Myanmar's most strategically important outposts. The military has shown no sign of being pressed into backtracking on its coup, which derailed a slow transition to democracy in a country that was under strict military rule from a 1962 coup until the generals initiated reforms a decade ago. Russian jets, meanwhile, struck down on rebel camps at the Syrian-Turkey border. The airstrikes left fuel tankers burning as a gas facility was hit by the strike near the city of Sarmada. The strikes took place hours after the shelling of a hospital building by Syrian artillery. Fighting between Syrian army forces and rebels has subsided since a deal put an end to Russian-led strikes. And polling ended in the Republic of Congo with likely expectation of Denis Sassou Nguesso to extend his 36-year rule despite an economic crisis in the Central African oil-producing nation. The president's main rival, former government minister Guy Price Parfait Colelas, fights a battle with COVID and had to be evacuated to France. Sassou, a 77-year-old former paratrooper, rose to power in 1979. He lost Congo's first multi-party elections in 1992 but reclaimed the presidency in 1997 after a civil war. And Iceland's volcano near its capital Reykjavik continues to spew lava and magma in the night as well. As you can see in those visuals, the eruption throwing lava to about 1 square kilometer of the area is the first on the peninsula since the 12th century. A fissure 500 to 750 meters long has also opened at the eruption site earlier, spewing lava fountains up to 100 meters high. According to the Icelandic Met Office, the eruption posed no immediate danger to people or to critical infrastructure in the region. Mohamed Bazoum will be the next president of Niger. The country's top court confirmed the victory of the ruling party's candidate Bazoum in last month's presidential runoff. The court credited Bazoum with 55.6% of votes ahead of former President Mahamadou Ousmane, who secured 44.34%. Bazoum will supersede President Mahamadou Issoufou, who is stepping down after serving 2 terms of 5 years. Bazoum's inauguration on April 2nd will mark the West African country's first transfer of power from one democratically elected leader to another. And the North Korean embassy in Malaysia shut down as both countries severed ties abruptly. The decision came after Malaysia extradited a Korean national to the US in a money laundering case which allegedly allowed illicit shipments to North Korea on fraudulent documents. Malaysia, in response, has decided to shut its embassy in Pyongyang and ask North Korean diplomats to leave the country within 48 hours' notice. And thousands of protesters gathered outside the residence of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, demanding the end of his leadership. The protests are taking place just days ahead of the country's 4th election in 2 years. Netanyahu faces trial in corruption cases and is also accused of mismanaging the COVID pandemic crisis, mounting pressure on the leader. Netanyahu is pinning hopes on rapid COVID vaccination programs, which have allowed much of the economy to open after 3 lockdowns, along with a series of normalization agreements with Arab countries. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has urged people to stand against the antics of the mafia all around the world as they abuse the pandemic to their own advantage. Earlier, Interpol coordination based in Paris had warned against the targeting of COVID vaccines by the mafia. The Pope stated that the mafia are using the COVID pandemic to enrich themselves through corruption. The mafia bails out small businesses in these tough times, demanding exorbitant interest rates. And time now for a look at updates on the COVID-19 situation from across the globe. The case tally has crossed the 12 crore mark. It currently stands at over 12 crore 38 lakhs. The tally of recovery stands at over 9 crore 97 lakhs. COVID-19 has claimed over 27,27,000 lives worldwide. The US continues to remain the worst affected from COVID, where more than 3 crore 5 lakh cases of COVID-19 have been quoted. The country's fatalities have crossed 5,55,000. And thousands attended anti-lockdown demonstrations in London after MPs urged the government to allow peaceful protests during the lockdown. Dozens have been arrested as police attempted to halt thousands of anti-lockdown protesters marching through the centre of London. Demonstrators trailed by police paraded banners and lit flares as they walked from Hyde Park along Oxford Street, Chancery Lane, the Embankment and Parliament Square before heading up to Whitehall. Scotland Yard said 36 people have been arrested for breach of COVID regulations. Scuffles broke out as anti-lockdown protesters marched through central London on Saturday as well, with protesters defying police warnings for them to stay away due to corona restrictions. Under England's coronavirus rules, it is unlawful for groups to gather for the purpose of protest, but opposition to such measures has grown this week, not specifically related to anti-lockdown demonstrations. And supporters of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro staked all social distancing norms as they celebrate the leader's 66th birthday in Rio de Janeiro and Brasilia. Bolsonaro has come under fire for his handling of the corona pandemic. Brazil is still facing a surge in COVID cases. The health ministry in Brazil reported a daily record of 90,517 new cases in the past 24 hours. The federal government has been slow to roll out vaccinations in the country, with some local governments needing to halt immunization at various points due to lack of supplies. The country has a total number of 12 million cases till now, with a death toll of 290,000. And hundreds of German tourists thronged Spain's island of Mallorca as Berlin lifted a quarantine requirement for travelers returning from the Balearic Islands last week. The new travel measures have led demand for flights to the archipelago to soar. The arrival of the German tourists was noticeable on the island over the weekend, with restaurants once again serving food. However, Spaniards still cannot do so due to travel bans between regions over Easter as COVID-19 fears continue to linger. And Spain has seen over 32,12,000 cases of COVID-19 with more than 70,900 fatalities. And amid an upward trend in COVID-19 cases registered in France, the country provided COVID vaccines to its health workers. France is under a new lockdown since the 20th of March and is facing a row among leaders over whether inoculation should be open to everyone or not. Earlier, Paris's Mayor Anne Hidalgo called on leaders to open the vaccination to people of all age groups rather than just the elderly, health workers and people with existing conditions that make them more vulnerable to COVID-19. However, the government disagreed, saying that it would take inoculations away from people at risk to be given to younger ones who need them less. And domestic equity markets began trading in the negative this morning. The Sensex was down, nearing 49,500 levels, while Nifty gave up 14,700. None of the gainers on Sensex jumped more than 1%. Dr. Reddy's and Sun Pharma were the top gainers. Dragging the index down were Reliance Industries, HDFC Bank and other index heavyweights. India VIX gained 3.8% to cross 20 levels. Foreign portfolio investors have been flooding domestic markets this fiscal year. The latest data from the Reserve Bank of India shows that FPI investment into domestic equities till the 10th of March of this fiscal year stands at $36 million, their highest investment into the country since 2013. Asian shares were mixed today as sentiment was shaken by the US Federal Reserve's announcement that it would end some emergency measures put in place last year to help the financial industry deal with the pandemic. Japan's Nikkei 225 Nick 1.56% fell 1.8%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index HSI 0.18% inched 0.2% lower. In Tokyo trading, major stocks fell nearly across the board, including automakers like Toyota, Motor Corp and Honda Motor Company, whose earnings get a boost from a healthy US economy. It is to be noted that the move last week by the Fed will restore some of the capital requirements for big banks that were suspended in the early months of the viral outbreak. In order to give banks flexibility, the banking industry had hoped those measures would be extended. And now on to some sports news, starting off with football. Chelsea has reached the semi-finals of the FA Cup. The team beat Sheffield United 2-0 on Sunday. Chelsea were lucky as in the first half, Sheffield United player Norwood scored in the 24th minute. This self-goal put Chelsea ahead 1-0. After this, there was no goal in the match for a long time. The second goal for Chelsea was scored by Ziyech in the final minutes of the game. Chelsea's team will now face Premier League leaders Man City in the semi-finals. The final match of the competition will be played on May 15th at the Wembley. And Leicester City has also made it into the semi-finals of the FA Cup, defeating Manchester United 3-1. Leicester City has reached the FA Cup semi-final for the first time in 39 years. Kelechi Iheanacho played a key role in Leicester's victory, scoring 2 goals in the 24th and 78th minutes of the game. Leicester's third goal was scored by Tielemans in the 52nd minute of the second half, while Greenwood scored the only goal from Manchester in the 38th minute. Leicester City will now take on Southampton side in the semi-finals. And Barcelona won big on Sunday in the Spanish La Liga. Barca beat Real Sociedad 6-1. With this victory, the club further strengthens its chances of winning the competition. Star player Lionel Messi and Sergio Dest contributed to the win, both of them scoring 2 goals each for the team. Lionel Messi now has 23 league goals this season. The opening goal for Barca was scored by Antoine Griezmann, who scored the first goal for the team in the 37th minute. Cancer is a major health concern. Cancer is often treatable if diagnosed early and treated timely. Watch this report on lymphoma, that is a cancer of the lymphatic system, and how to deal with it.
Lymphoma is a common cancer that affects many people. Lymphoma is a cancer of lymphatic system. It develops in lymphocytes, which are a type of white blood cells. These cells help fight disease in the body and play an essential role in body's immune defenses. As this type of cancer is present in the lymph system, it can quickly metastasize or spread to different tissues and organs throughout the body. Lymphoma most often spreads to the liver, bone marrow, or lungs.
Lymphoma is the abnormal proliferation of all the glands which are usually present in our body, like in cervical area, in axillary area, in inguinal area, and in abdomen. When this lymph node is rapidly progressive and abnormally increase in size, this is called lymphoma. And usually in any case of lymphoma, you should get the FNAC or biopsy to be done to confirm the diagnosis of which type of lymphoma it is, and all the treatment is based on this type of lymphoma. Is it a Hodgkin's lymphoma or is it non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? But particularly be aware of all the abnormal lymph node is not lymphoma, it might be reactive. So first go for FNAC or biopsy to differentiate it is reactive or lymphoma, then proceed for the further treatment. The first symptoms is enlargement of the lymph node, but it always not always is 50% associated with other symptoms like fever, like drenching net sweat, like weight loss. Usually it is associated with this type of symptoms, so you should get immediate attention to doctors if any lymph node and all these 3 symptoms called B symptoms. Any lymph node enlargement and B symptoms, you should consult your doctor and biopsy to be done immediately, and rest of the treatment depending on the type of lymphoma.
People of any age can develop lymphoma, but it is among the most common causes of cancer in children and young adults aged between 15 to 24 years.
treatment depends on which type of lymphoma it is. Is it Hodgkin's lymphoma is very good modality of treatment, short treatment, and the response rate and survival is very good. In case of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, definitely because of the target therapy, the response rate and survival is good in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma also. But we should get the early treatment, and definitely there is a good treatment for all the lymphoma, and the survival is very good if we can detect early and treatment start immediately.
Treatment of lymphoma depends on the type of lymphoma and its severity. Early diagnosis and timely treatment may result in better outcome. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
March 21st is celebrated as the International Day of Forests every year worldwide after the United Nations General Assembly coined it back in 2012 with the aim of raising awareness about the importance of forest conservation. In Rameshwaram's Dhanushkodi, the International Day of Forests was celebrated as a wildlife awareness festival. The event was held to create awareness among fishermen of Dhanushkodi about the theme of International Day of Forests, which is forest conservation, forest recovery, and the path to well-being. On the occasion, in order to protect the sea turtle, in the area, 220 turtle hatchlings were released from eggs stored in the hatchery into the sea. Here are visuals of that event. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of News on the Hour. We hope you enjoyed our show. But news and updates continue on DD India, so keep watching. Namaskar. Have a great day.